Welcome to the special edition of Tech at Work. I'm Reema Tendulkar, coming to you from the NASSCOM annual flagship Technology and Leadership Summit. Here today, I caught up with many stalwarts from the world of technology to get a sense of the demand, the macro environment that we're currently in. Listen in from Krishnan Ramanujan, who is the president of TCS. He's also the chairperson of NASSCOM, and he tells us that the mood is cautious. In fact, majority of the clients appear to be cautious. I also caught up with Kishore Patil, the co-founder, CEO, MD of KPIT Technology. He, on the other hand, is very confident about maintaining an organic revenue growth of 20% over the medium term. Listen in.
If you look at job creation at scale, right? The industry added about 290,000 jobs during the course of the year, which again, judging by pre-COVID standards, the last 2 years have been very different. But by the pre-COVID standards, it is a very, very strong job creation performance by the industry. Similarly, if you look at the innovation side of it, startups, 1,300 new startups happened during the course of the year. The early stage funding for those startups went up by 25%. So all of these are extremely bullish and extremely positive developments that portend to a fantastic year that has gone by. So we are supremely pleased with that. You asked about the year ahead. So year ahead, while I'm not able to share any numbers for the year ahead, the survey broadly points to caution in the wind, right? And that's understandable. I think we've all known it for a while that the war in Ukraine, the recessionary headwinds that are caused by the combination of the war and other geopolitical considerations that are going on, as well as the effect of inflation, the rate, US dollar strengthening, and so on and so forth. There is a lot of uncertainty in the world. Even if you look at the year 2022, the manner in which it began with a lot of optimism and exuberance, it went through several seesaw things, and by the end of the year, it looked very different, completely opposite to how it began. And in between, there were quite a few changes in sentiment as well. So most organizations globally are having a very hard time in terms of planning and the horizon at which they have to plan. And that uncertainty is the broad keyword.
So when you say clients are caution, how will this show up? Does it show up in tech budgets not being reported as they typically do in the month of January, February, March? Will it be delayed by 6 months? Or will they now plan for tech spends for 3 months instead of an annual spend? Does it result in deals being paused or being cut in size? How does this caution show up?
It is not a one-size-fits-all, Rima.
It's all of the above?
All of the above, which is what makes it a little more complicated. When we talk about the situation being uncertain and caution is in the wind, different companies are reacting to the situation differently. Right? Some of them are choosing to postpone their budget finalizations by 3 months. Others are saying, let's take a short-term view. Let's not do an annual budget, but let's take a 3-month view and do this. And others are saying that all of the new product introduction related things will suspend, but let's try and get some operating efficiencies going so that we are ready for a rainy day. So it is mixed across the board.
And how many CXOs did you all survey when you did this tech survey? And these were global CXOs?
These are all global CXOs, but I'd be hard pressed in terms of numbers and so on and so forth. That probably NASSCOM Secretariat would be able to give you the specific numbers.
But would you say that this is a majority view? This caution?
That's right. Caution would be the majority view across industries, I would say.
And that would imply, right, that growth next year is going to be less than what we've seen this year? The problem is I don't know, right? Firstly, growth would be less when you look at it from a FY23 point of view, probably. And that's because, just as I talked about, we are just coming off of a pandemic, and that induced a huge wave of tech spending and so on. And FY23 had a bit of that tailwind as well. And FY24 would probably be the first year which is truly having no effects of the pandemic, right? And that, in my opinion, needs to be compared with how an FY19 or FY18 was. When you do that comparison, I am reasonably optimistic that it will be a positive year. But if you compare it with FY22 or FY23, you would be fair in saying that it would be slower. You all are calling this a no normal year, a no normal environment. What exactly does that mean?
So that's what I just talked about, right? It's very hard for anybody to predict anything and be able to plan for it. And just as an example, right, if you take FY22, the year began on a very exuberant note, right? How technology is the medicine to everything, and it's going to be a super year. Globally, we are recovering from the pandemic. There's going to be a huge resurgence, growth, and so on. And then along came the war, and suddenly all hell broke loose, and it went into a bit of a slowdown, if you will, right? Similarly, when the year began, at least in India, but more broadly globally as well, attrition was a huge issue, right? And we were all worried about that.
Well, now we're worried about layoffs.
Right? Yeah, exactly. So the way in which it has panned out is that not only is no longer a year of mass resignation, it's threatening to lead into a year of mass layoffs as well.
But can that happen in India, mass layoffs? All we've seen right now is hiring being paused or slowed down, headcount being stable, not increasing.
I would say anything can happen. I'm not saying anything will happen. Anything can happen because see, we will as a broad industry point of view, right? Anytime there is a lot of exuberance, at least part of that exuberance will result in irrationality. Right? Depending on companies, how irrational have they been in terms of their planning of taking advantage of the benign scenario last year.
The tech industry has been irrational in its hiring, you think, over the last 2 years?
What I said was, anytime there is exuberance, at least part of it is likely to be irrational.
We talked about that it is not about a quarter or two. It is we are talking about a medium-term range. I think the trends are, in the industry are more medium-term. We are looking at 3 to 4 years, kind of at least the cycle of growth in this industry, if not beyond. So I think there is nothing, unfortunately, new to report. But I said the demand spent from the client continues, and we continue to benefit from it.
Any of your clients under stress? 1, 2, handful?
So from our perspective, what we have done in last few years is we are working with very select clients, and we put a lot of governance over with whom we work. And there are 2-3 parts which we look at it, whether how they treat us strategically, and secondly, whether they have a clear vision and funding available for our next 3-4 years. So I think from that perspective, we are quite covered. But certainly, I mean, only in few parts where you talk about disruptors or startups or some of those companies, which is a very small part of it, but we have to be careful and watch them carefully, which we are doing that anyway.
Okay, so any of your clients have seen budget cuts?
We are not seen in the areas in which we work any significant budget cuts.
Okay, and if your demand picture is still very much intact, this year I believe you're going to be growing at more than 30%. That's the guidance, 31-32% that you've shared. What could the number look like in FY24?
That's the month of April when we come out with the numbers for the next year. I have said that in next 2-3 years we will have a robust growth, that I have said. Of course, 30% plus is a part of organic and inorganic.
Technica aided.
Yeah, but I think our organic growth has been strong even in this year, 24-25%.
And do you have large deals in the pipeline, like the Renault deal?
Absolutely, we have. But I always keep on talking about it. It's not necessarily about announcing a deal, because this is our normal business. But sometimes the client is also interested or keen in announcing the deals. That's a very rare, actually. So when it happens, we announce it. But I may say that every day we have to win the business. Right?
So Renault type deals are happening all the time. It's not always that you announce it to the public.
That is true. That is true.
Anything else that you would like to, qualify, put out to our viewers? People who've invested in KPI.
It's not about qualify, but it is about what is our area of focus for us is improving the quality of hire. That's what we have to continue to do it. We believe that we are getting into more complex projects. We require, apart from software skills, also very good domain knowledge. So we are looking at really increasing our quality of hires, both from the colleges, but laterally more, and globally. So I think that is one area where what we are focusing on.
I also caught up with Ashwin Yardi, CEO of Capgemini India. Well, Capgemini globally has guided for a 4 to 7% growth in the coming year, which compares with over a 16.5% growth last year. So I caught up with him and asked him, why are clients so conservative? Listen in.
For Capgemini, 2022 was the best year we've had, almost 22 billion euros in revenue. That was a 16.5% growth at constant currency, one of the highest, following 8 quarters of double-digit growth. If you look at our bookings, again a very strong number, and we delivered a very strong cash and profitability numbers. So in some way, the mood's actually very positive at the headquarters. We ended the year with a very strong momentum on bookings. At the same time, what we do see is there is some conservatism in the market, and that's how we've sort of given a reasonable guidance looking at how we see Q1, Q2. So we've given a guidance of 4 to 7%, but we're reasonably bullish on the market, especially coming out of how we closed the year and what we have done in the market over the last 2 to 3 years in terms of our strategy, in terms of our focus on clients. I think the mood actually is quite optimistic and positive for 2023.
But if the mood is optimistic, can you explain your guidance for next year? If you have done 16.6% constant currency revenue growth last year, 4 to 7% growth doesn't appear to be reasonable. It appears to be subdued to the person sitting outside. Can you explain that? And also, what exactly do you mean when you say the clients are conservative?
So I would say 2 things. First, the reason, as I said again, is we do see there is a softness, and based on the industry, again, there are certain clients who are more actively or acutely impacted by the macroeconomics, and they are looking at how they would save costs, or they're revisiting some of their investments in technology. And a lot of people are uncertain. A lot of our clients are trying to gauge their industry, gauge the impact of all the macroeconomics, geopolitical situation. And hence they are cautious, and hence they also invite and watch, and that's the sort of rationale behind the guidance, is we just want to be sure clients would spend all the money which they have agreed to spend with us. Okay, there's nothing which says they won't, but we want to be sure and see how the quarter or how the H1 pans out.
We're heading into a short break. Don't go anywhere. Our coverage continues on the other side. Back, we are at the NASSCOM Technology and Leadership Summit. As per NASSCOM, 2022 has seen very strong growth from the domestic market, but Europe has been a bit subdued. That's the word coming in from Debjani Ghosh. We also caught up with a lot of the other big voices from the world of technology, whether it's Ingram Micro's top executive Sanjeev Sahu. We also heard from Ashish Dhawan earlier of Chris Capital, and now, of course, he's got a philanthropic bent of mind. Listening to all the big voices from the world of technology at the NASSCOM.
Could you start off by telling me, give me a sense of, how the growth was for the IT sector last year, and what are we estimating for FY23?
So the growth last year was very good. Given that 2021 was a year of records and milestones, and given what was happening towards end of 2021 and beginning 2022 with the Ukraine-Russia situation, the global geopolitical dynamics, there was a lot of concern about what this would do. So I think the year was a very strong year of resilience, which resulted in strong growth. And I keep saying that in today's time of no normal, the industry has to build resilience above all. And I think our industry has done that, and it really paid off. So we actually delivered around a 9% growth in reported currency. And if you look at services, IT exports, in constant currency, it was actually a double-digit growth, which was fantastic. We added 290,000 new jobs. We added 18 billion in revenue, and we continue to be the trusted digital transformation partner for the world.
Right. And you did mention that there were a couple of headwinds, and client spending slowing down was one of them. Help me understand, which sectors are we seeing the slowdown in, and which geographies also?
I didn't talk about client spending slowdown. I talked about client decision making slowdown. Spending is not slowing down, and especially in recession and slowdown, people spend more on tech. Right. That happens every time. You can go back in history and look at it. What we are seeing is spending priorities changing. So people are spending on the now, here and now, which will give them the immediate results in terms of productivity and effect. But decision making is definitely slowing down a bit. But we will see how it plays out. But the need for digitization is not going away anytime soon.
Yeah, Ingram Micro is one of the largest technology distributors in the world. We are the actually brand behind the biggest technology brands. We serve more than 170,000 customers, channel partners across the world, and we also help more than 1,500 technology vendors, to bring technology to the market. And we operate in more than 59 countries, as you said, $54 billion revenue. So we are actually transforming one of the most complicated and big ecosystems, the technology ecosystems in the world.
So if I'm a company and I want to buy computers for my entire office, instead of going to Microsoft directly, I buy through you, and the same is applicable even for, say, cloud or any other service? Is that how it works?
Yeah, what we do is we take technology, hardware, software from all these companies, and we give it to the resellers. So our customers are the resellers who actually get it to the end user. So we actually sell hardware, software, subscriptions, services, everything technology, and that's what we are.
You've launched a platform very recently, globally, called Xvantage, which promises a Netflix-like experience for all your customers and clients. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, very excited about it, Rima, about Xvantage. If you look at this, our industry, we do not have that consumerization experience in our industry. On a Sunday, we watch a game, we order food through an app, and on a Monday, we come to distribution. It's a very disjointed experience. We do not have that similar experience. So Xvantage is our new digital twin, a digital ecosystem that has an AI-powered self-learning way to actually customize the experience for our channel partners.
India is not a cheap market. It's quite fully priced. And so even though I'm bullish on the long term, I think one has to be careful in terms of selecting the right securities, focus on the right sectors. You can't blindly just buy the market, is my own view.
You can't spray and pray.
You can't spray and pray. There's no doubt
What about
that.
the global view?
I think globally, I'm actually more bearish than India. I think Indian equities will do better in the next 10 years than developed market. So if you look like the past decade, and Ruchi Sharma writes about this a lot, and I think he's right, that the US really did phenomenally well, and emerging markets sort of were waddling around. I think this comes in cycles, as you know. I think in that 2003 to 2008 period was the period of emerging markets. We did much better than developed markets. I think this is the period of EM now. And India being a preeminent EM because China is in the penalty box. So I think we have a real shot at goal.
Okay.
So I think we are better positioned than developed. Developed markets just have too much leverage, that they need to wean off, bad policies, I think, and just the demographics and productivity is low.
You said bad policy for the developed markets.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a fan of what was done during COVID in terms of spraying money to people, and it was fiscally irresponsible. And I think that just generally, you look at population growth or workforce growth is very low, and productivity growth is very low. So I think the developed world will grow at 1 to 2% in the next decade. And equities, I won't be surprised if you have almost no return out of equities in the developed world in the next decade. Whereas
no return on equity markets in the developed markets over the next decade?
Yeah, I think very low returns to zero returns. And so I think, and bonds also are in a tough place. So I think India, EM will do well, and India could be a shining star.
I have with me Mr. Janmajaya Sinha, Chairman of BCG's India practice. Mr. Sinha, thank you very much for joining in. Your session today at NASSCOM Leadership Summit is the future of global economy, integrated or fragmented. Where do you stand on this, and how does this shape the macro environment that we're living in?
Globalization is a fact, it's not a policy. It is, the world cannot fragment. The Cold War era is over. The world is much too integrated. The nature of collaboration will have different buckets. There will be areas of cooperation. There will be areas of accentuated competition. And there will be areas of conflict. So, I mean, this whole thing about deglobalization is the wrong question. It is de-risking. People will need to de-risk their operations. They will need to de-risk their dependence on feedstock over a certain amount on certain countries. That's what's happening. And I don't think it can possibly unwind. It'll just create more centers which will be integrated.
I want to talk a bit about growth and demand. Everyone's worried about growth falling off. Like the turbocharged environment that we were in post-COVID is now sort of moderating into a new normal, which will settle into growth rates that were there pre-COVID, right? Where do you stand on growth? Globally, are we in for a recession, a hard landing? And if there are so many linkages, economic linkages, India has to the rest of the world, will India not feel the heat?
So, firstly, with so much uncertainty, any prediction is completely open to being proven wrong. Because there is so much uncertainty, I can speculate with everyone else.
But you have 25 years of experience, so we would like your speculation.
Exactly. You look at it, the whole world was saying Europe will go into recession. It still hasn't gone into recession. Russia was supposed to have shrunk by 15%. It's actually going to do better than the UK as an economy. The US, for all you know, will have a soft landing. The job market is still very tight, even as interest rates go up. So if you really look at it, it's a complex world, but within this complex world, we are well positioned. Now, with so much uncertainty, the capex cycle gets affected because you need predictability to invest, and some of that is now being affected. But overall, in the current context, with what the government is doing with its infrastructure spending, it's taking away some of the risk to actually invest right now. Okay. So that's a good thing. And then there are spaces which are going to play to an advantage. Care, the whole care industry, healthcare, but much more than that, convalescent, nursing. And on the other side, as you think about it, can that be combined with tourism? In a sense.
Medical tourism is already on the uptick.
Yeah, but medical tourism is very small right now. We talk about it more than it is, but it needs to really seize the opportunity that is ahead of it.